With Apple's latest release of the newest generation of MacBook Pros, the 14-inch and 16-inch with M1 Pro and M1 Max, I wanted to take a look at a comparable Windows machine that could really take on that 14-inch model. And that's what led me to the Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Carbon. Now, although the i7-1165 G7 that is in the ThinkPad X1 Carbon may not be able to compete with the newest generation of M1 Pro and M1 Max processors, this thing definitely meets a lot of the build quality standards that Apple has set on the Mac side of things from a Windows-based laptop. And it actually kind of exceeds Apple in a lot of different places when it comes to thinness, as well as lightness and just overall durability of this chassis. So this thing comes in at 2.5 pounds and is really put through Lenovo's testing when it comes to durability of their ThinkPad lineup, going through tests such as heat resistance, dust and sand resistance, and things like that, where a professional that's using a ThinkPad laptop should really be able to trust that this thing is going to be able to last and work through all of the difficult situations that a professional is going to use this laptop in. And that is all kind of brought together by the magnesium and carbon fiber finish that is on this ThinkPad chassis. And the chassis is super nice and super stiff. There's very little deck flex and very little twist inside of this chassis due to the composition of the materials that are being used in the X1 Carbon. And although, like I mentioned, the 1165 G7, the Intel 11th Gen Evo platform may not be able to compete to the high quality standards of an M1 processor paired with Mac OS, the 1165 G7 delivers quite a good experience on this laptop. It is super quiet and really, really efficient while also delivering pretty good graphics performance and CPU performance in a lot of different tasks. I mean, you have 4 cores and 8 threads. You also have Intel's Xe graphics. So even gaming on this thing in a game like Valorant or CSGO, where you're very CPU dependent, you drop all of your settings down to low or medium, you'll be able to manage the 60 FPS that this display is able to output on a professional 14-inch thin and light computer, which is awesome. And although most professionals may not use this laptop for that purpose, it's still nice to know that you can perform some of those tasks like gaming on a thin and light computer like the X1 Carbon. But let's go through some of the pros and cons of this machine, starting off with the pros. So like I mentioned at the beginning, at the offset, this thing's build quality is superb and definitely meets or exceeds Apple standards in a lot of different senses. The materials are awesome. The stiffness of this chassis is great. I mean, even the screen, for being super thin, has very little wobble to it. The hinge is very, very nice, and really allows you to trust this computer in day-to-day use. The next really nice thing about the ThinkPad X1 is the port selection. So you get 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, capable of powering the best of displays, as well as actually powering this computer. So it charges over the Thunderbolt 4 ports, over USB Type-C at 65 watts, which is the charger power that is being delivered to this computer. And it's actually capable of fast charging to 4 hours of battery life in as little as 30 minutes. You also get 2 USB Type-A at 3.2 ports, as well as an HDMI 2.0 port. So just like Apple settling for HDMI 2.0 on their newest MacBooks versus HDMI 2.1, that HDMI port will be able to drive a 4K display at 60 Hz, but not the 4K 120 Hz that we've seen with HDMI 2.1. And of course, you also do get a 3.5mm headphone microphone jack combo. So the port selection is really nice and very similar to what we are seeing on the newest MacBooks, minus an SD card reader and add a couple of Type A's. And another area that this laptop really excels in is in the sound quality as well as the display quality. So this thing has built-in Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision that really allows the sound from this laptop to come through. Also, the display is really nice on this particular model. So this model comes with an FHD 1080p screen. So not the highest of resolutions, but you don't necessarily need that on a 14-inch display. And it'll peak at 400 nits, so not the brightest of displays either. The display on the newest MacBooks is going to be a much better experience than this particular display, but it's still very nice quality for a 14-inch laptop. You can actually spec this thing up to a 4K display at 500 nits of brightness, but this particular model comes with that 1080p screen. And the displays on these laptops are 16:10, so you do get that slightly taller screen aspect ratio to give you a little bit more screen real estate when you're browsing the web or working through some Excel workbooks on this laptop. Now let's get into some of the weaker links in the ThinkPad X1 Carbon. And the first one is definitely the trackpad. So this is one of the smaller trackpads on a premier high-end professional laptop. MacBooks are kind of the kings of the trackpad. You know, you're getting probably almost twice the trackpad real estate on a MacBook or even an XPS 15 that you would on this Lenovo 14-inch X1 Carbon, but it's still very responsive and very nice just using it, but you do run out of some room when using this smaller trackpad. Another area that is not the best is going to be battery life. So although this thing does get 9 hours of battery life in pretty rough day-to-day testing, it only has a 57 watt-hour battery. Again, the i7 1165 G7 is quite an efficient processor, but it would have been nice to have slightly more battery power in this machine, but there are some compromises that have to be made in order to keep the thinness and the weight down on this laptop. And another lackluster piece of this machine is the camera setup, as well as the lack of face unlock on this particular model. So you can spec out the X1 Carbon to include Windows Hello, and all of the models do come with a fingerprint scanner that does all of the privacy and security detection on the machine itself, which is great for security and perfect for professionals. But it would have been nice to have Windows Hello facial recognition out of the box on all of these models, as well as a better webcam. So we are only getting a 720p webcam, and we'll test that out right now. So as you can tell, this isn't the best quality webcam out there. There's some smearing, it's not very high resolution due to that 720p constraint. So it would be nice to have a 1080p webcam on this device, like you're getting in the newer XPSs and the newer MacBooks of today. But overall, for 720p, this webcam really isn't that bad and is all you really need for Zoom calls or Teams meetings on this laptop. One of the biggest question marks I have on this laptop is the price. So although the MSRP on this laptop can be over $3,000 on Lenovo's website, there's normally deals on their website for this laptop, which for this particular model brings it to right around $1,800. And you can also find this laptop on CDW and some of the other professional retailers that are selling laptops and other electronics to companies. But it's going to be difficult to find this laptop on your Amazons or your Best Buys that would typically be more consumer oriented when it comes to purchasing laptops. But again, this is a laptop really targeted at professionals and businesses that are looking for those extra security features and the durability aspect of a machine like this. So although there are still a few improvements here and there that Lenovo could make to the ThinkPad X1 Carbon, it's still a tremendous laptop, and using it for the last few weeks as my daily driver, kind of even pushing my desktop aside, leaving the MacBook just kind of sitting over on the side of my desk. I've really enjoyed the experience on the Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Carbon. 16 gigs of RAM, an i7 is all you really need for the majority of office tasks that are going to be done on an Ultrabook like this one. The sound quality, the display are amazing. The keyboard is great. The build quality, of course, is one of the premier features of this laptop. And overall, the battery life is quite good as well, using this day in and day out and not really having an issue of needing to always be plugged in or anything like that. This thing is perfect while you're on the go. So yeah, overall, this is probably my top pick of a 14-inch laptop to compete against the newest generation of MacBook Pro. This thing also comes ready to upgrade to Windows 11 if you do choose to do that. A lot of companies are, of course, going to stick with Windows 10 for the time being until they need to upgrade to Windows 11 down the line. But it's there, it's an option for this machine. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on the X1 Carbon. Do you think it's a good comparison to the newest 14-inch MacBook Pro, or would you compare it to something else? If you have any other questions, definitely leave those down below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, get subscribed to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.